Welcome to the home of innovation. I hope you'll make time to go onto our website, ihub.co.ke, and sign up as a member. Then that way you can get a lot more updates on what's happening in the space. So today it's my privilege to welcome Professor Ndemo again to host us another conversation around entrepreneurship. I think this one's going to be particularly interesting. I think we'll talk about money a little bit, which I know is why a lot of you are in the space. Professor Ndemo, welcome.
Good morning. Today we are privileged to have two speakers, June Gadoni and Lee Gashomba. Lee is from ABC Bank. And last time I was talking to them, they were telling me they want to know you guys. There is so much news around apps development, many developers in this country. And then there is so many problems where banks reject you. June was telling me when she was 19, she wants to look for money from a bank. And the bank threw the paper on her face to go and bring collateral. And collateral was a very big vocabulary for her. And I'm sure most of you have done so, trying to go to a bank, and the bank doesn't understand you. But before I call on June, I just want to brag a little bit that I traveled to Morocco and Tanzania, and I wanted to say a few things that I saw that probably would also help you in understanding what is happening in Africa. We went to Morocco for the Africa Innovation Foundation. This was an award ceremony for those who were finalists. There were 700 apps that were forwarded to the foundation, and they shortlisted 10. 10 of them, 2 were Kenyan, one from Muiru, Farm Capital, which looks for farmers, those who are very serious farmers, and links them to investors, mostly those who live in urban areas who want to invest money to the farmers in the rural areas. And he has created an app that is able to link them and be able to raise money. So far they have raised almost $500,000 US, and to fund the farmers, and the returns are good if you look at what they have managed to do. The other one was Chalo, who has M-Changa. I don't know how many of you know about M-Changa. M-Changa, it helps you raise funds without calling that Ndemo gave 5,000, but you can be able to raise money through that platform from all mobile money areas, and even banks, they can contribute to that. So they were the Kenyan finalists, and then there were 4 South Africans. There were 2 Moroccans, 1 Ghanaian, and 1 guy from Burundi. The reason why I'm saying this is what I learned from the finalists, because I talked to each one of them. The Moroccan was actually, one was the professor who actually won the final, at the end. And then the others had various applications, especially in the area of green energy, area of water. These are new areas that they are looking at. And the Muiru from Kenya became number 2. And then a South African took the prize of social impact. And when I looked at the South African group that was there, they were mostly South African white, and I asked them how come. The educational system in South Africa is sort of convoluted, and that's when ANC came into place, they focused more on quantity. But most of the white population have been able to go to good schools, and not many of South Africans, although the winner was a professor, but not many of the South African developers are university graduates, but they come from tertiary level colleges because the educational system is so good and prepares them to do that. And that's something now we can look at policy here, that most of our youth who may not go to university, but they are capable of doing such things, we should give them an opportunity to be able to develop such applications to international levels. Number two is that we managed to go around. Some of you who have been to Morocco know Morocco has heavily invested in education, heavy investments. And because of those investments, they have been able to develop 2 ICT parks, one in Rabat and another one in Casablanca. They want to develop in other places. But we were taken through the one in Casablanca, which graduates 50 entrepreneurs every year. They've been able to do almost 300 enterprises since they started, and some are now medium enterprises, having grown because of the support. The reason why I'm bringing these stories is because that the way we approach things in Kenya is slightly different, in the sense that the investors in the ICT parks are actually bankers, and the government only owns 30%, and that was the contribution of land and some buildings. And the banks invested the other 65%. Something which we want to inculcate in this country, that we need the private sector, because we've been talking about the triple helix, where the government, the private sector, the private sector, and research institutions to come and work with you. If we created that ecosystem, and you could see some of the problems we have here, we have not been having researchers supporting us or supporting those who are developing apps. And you will see this from next month's presentation. We're having somebody from Denmark, a professor from Denmark, to talk about the link between technology and livestock. And it's driven largely by the researchers, and with people like you now to be able to understand the problems in that area before you start coding. And this is very key, that we try as much as we can to talk to the private sector, the banking sector, for example, and take the example of Morocco, where they have invested heavily with government, and they're able to get people that they can grow to become large enterprises. They have succeeded heavily, but they still refer to Kenya, that we have done so well. And I came to discover this because I was speaking at the World Bank in DC. They had a conference on digital trade, and things we take for granted here, like M-Pesa, PesaPal, and some of the payment methods that we have. Most countries don't. After I presented, somebody from Bangladesh presented, and all he was talking about was Kenya. And he had come here to figure out how Kenyans succeeded. Later on, when I was talking to him, I told him, somebody has to take some risk somewhere. Someone has to be bold enough to take risk. And that's how we can succeed. Because one of the areas where we've been suffering is that some of the apps that you are doing here, some other governments are looking at them, but our government is not, has not looked at them carefully. Simply because either we don't trust one another or something, but we need to learn from this, that some of the risks that were taken to make M-Pesa work, we need to take more risks in order to create a smarter government. A smarter government in the sense that in as much as we can fight corruption through institutions, the solution lies in technology. You saw the president is the one who discovered that a bus has been hired for 2 million a month. If that data was in the open, it would have taken 2 days, someone to ask, which kind of bus is that? Is it gold-plated or something? Before the president could get it. And so we have teams here who can fight corruption, but cannot fight corruption because we still can't have open data. And these are issues we are raising here, and hopefully the policymakers can see the point and be able to leverage on your work here. And that's how we can begin to grow. So in Casablanca, in Rabat, they are looking up to Kenya. Because one of them came up to me and said, have you come up with an app on digital TV? Have you been following what has been happening? Have you heard Professor Bamba's had one? Hey, do you live here? Have you been following? Why do you look sad? The confusion is going to continue because I think some of you have looked at the smart TV. You almost totally get confused what you want to watch. I began to ask people, what did you watch last night? Oh, there is this channel called God. Actually, we don't move out of there. So they found one and got stuck there. Another, the Islamic channel, what else can I watch? And I think most of you are into digital advertising, and I saw one had almost cracked it, and they're looking at where they fully understand what is going to be offered for the next 1 week so that you can read through, understand, or watch, and then spin it and see from the reaction, then you can get advertisers to see that program. I think we are going to get almost 5,000 channels, and I don't know how people would watch. I don't know. I don't know. Already the statistics is that youth rarely watch news or watch local channels because of YouTube. And this is big news for advertisers. But even the advertisers don't know that. But you have the solutions around it. So if you come up quickly, I will link you up with these other people. Just think around it. Think around it. Find out the problems that we're having with the advent of digital TV and provide solutions. And these are the solutions that will change the lives of many, including yours. So I would ask June, ladies first, because we are the lady first, to make a presentation on entrepreneurship. She tells us about herself a little bit, and before we can ask Lee. I want you people to tear Lee into pieces why they have been refusing us money. June, it's your time. Yeah.
They say it's still morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name's June Gadhoni Mwangi. I work with an organization called SME Resource Center. We are not very far from here. We're based in Hurlingham, Jabavu House. And primarily what we do is that we work with small and medium business owners in what we call entrepreneurship development and promotion. To just give you a bit of my history, I started my ICT company in 2000. Yes, that was actually the January after I finished high school. It used to be called Next Generation Technology. And I thought it was a cool thing to do as a lady. IT was starting out, well, more people were getting more machines. And I went into selling of hardware, software, with no IT background whatsoever, but the business aspect out of it. So the story I was telling Dr. Ndemo is that, I mean, entrepreneurship has changed so much. Information is there, people are willing to speak to you about it, you can ask a question, somebody can answer. But in 2000, everyone was, ile biashara nafanya, I do it on my own. You know, it's true, I actually went, I thought to get assistance from the bank, you bank with them faithfully, and when you need help, they're going to help you. And when this gentleman told me, go get collateral, I had never heard of such a word, to be honest. You know, what is collateral? And he did not even take the time to say, when I mean a collateral, this is what you need to go and do and everything. And my supplier at that time was Mitsumi. They're still operating. The supplier laughed and said, welcome to the business world. You know, these are the realities of business. You always have to have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. Now, for me, over the period I did, you know, I had the IT company until 2008. I did very well, but I felt a calling to be able to look at what are the challenges that, you know, small entrepreneurs are facing every day, that I can be able to use my own experience to be able to help them have a better way of doing their business, to grow their businesses, you know, to get to that point that you can say, I started from this point to this other point, and that's how the SME Resource Center started. Now, today, I'm going to make it very simple. I want a lot of interaction, because when you're in this space, sometimes whatever business, even the mama mboga, when she's selling boga, you know, she wakes up every morning thinking, today I need to be able to buy 5 bunch of sukuma wikis. This is how I'm going to sell it. You know, if I usually sit down, people come to me, that's well and good. If tomorrow I usually shout, kujeni chukweni mboga, bebeni mboga, that's what I'm going to do. So we can get very involved in what to do, especially for take it like yourself. You know, you're building that up, you're coding. You know, I'm trying to remember these words, so correct me when I go wrong. But in essence, you're not, unless, is there anyone who's doing this for free? Anyone who's doing, or that app you're building, or that coding you're doing, you want it to make money for you, essentially, correct? There's some who are not shaking their head, so unless there are NGOs here, you know, you want it to make money for you. So there's much more to what you're doing that you need to be able to put in. You have to build your capacity as a business owner. You know, let's use the example for Wezetele, who sold just the other day. From your own observations, what was that extra difference that made them become very attractive to the investor? Anyone? I would think you guys have so much information about them. I mean, they were bought for 100 million. Isn't that the ideal situation? Dr. Ndemo? I am shocked. I mean, is that not the ideal situation, that you can be able to monetize whatever you're doing? So by now, somebody should have spoken to them. What is that different? But from an article that I read for somebody who, you know, broke it down, they tested their product. They went out there to get their customers, meaning they had to do a lot of presentations, meaning they had to do their own marketing, meaning they had to know how to negotiate. That's an interesting one. Meaning they had to know how to negotiate, meaning they had to know other options. Yes, the main product was that application, but they essentially had to become business owners. So when you're seated there, what is this extra that you're doing? Today, can you come to me and sell to me as an SME who does not understand technology, to understand what your product is? I'll tell you a situation. We get in walk-ins because we work with a lot of SME business owners. We have a club that has over 3,000 business owners countrywide who are doing very different things in different sectors. So they have, you know, we're talking from manufacturing, from retail. So we get in people in the, or rather, technical guys in there, you know, doing coding and applications coming in. But sometimes it is so complicated, you're not sure what that means. For example, we at SME Resource Center have been looking for, and maybe somebody should pitch this, we've been looking for software that can be able to, you know, register our members, be able to interact with them, to be able to send information, to be able to say that 5 years from now, somebody who became an SME club member, we can be able to get their own record and say, when he came in, he was straight from high school or straight from university. He came in as a member. These are the programs that he's been able to access. This is how his growth has been. Some information, big data that we can be able to even share and be able to say that if you're looking to list, these are the things that you can be able to change. I have been looking for somebody to do that software for almost 3 years. So I hope one of the person in here will be able to talk. So going back, at the end of the day, for me, who interacts a lot with entrepreneurs, we hope that as you're in your cocoon in looking at this application, you're looking at the other business skills management that are important for you to be able to sell the product. To be able to understand, have you tested your product with even a friend, a neighbor, your mother? Because it's told that the simpler it is to use, the faster it will be uptaken. I mean, any success story that we know in this space, the Facebooks, the Twitters, it is the ease of use that somebody who used this as a byproduct. When I came in, I was looking around. I was the only one who had a notebook writing down, Those are the realities that are there. So for me, my hope would be that as you're doing these programs, we have the ideal situation. We want our companies to be bought at those 200 million, 100 million. We're looking for corporate, but also think about the SMEs. There are many. They're the ones who have the business. They're the ones who are easier to even pitch to and take up that product. And we're talking about across sector. Let's look at those options that are going to automate SMEs because they need it, and they're easier to be able to uptake it because they know that, it gives me that extra edge. And the question that I would probably be also asking is that, what are those extra edge? I mean, you're in this space, you're doing this. They always say beautiful ones are still being born, meaning newer people who are brighter, sharper in this space are still coming in. Other countries, as Dr. Ndemo is saying, are looking at Kenya and saying, we need to compete with these guys. So what are those extra things that you need to be able to put in to raise your capacity as an entrepreneur? Because unless you're doing this to give for free, and I'm sure probably the others were there, if you're looking for it to make money for you, you have to take it a step further. So I would like to leave you with a few things. I don't know if, finish and we see if there are any questions we can be able to talk about, anything that you want to throw out there. In saying that, look around you, talk to the guys who are out there, walk into companies. When you have an application, if it's something to be in the manufacturing industry, which factories have you walked to just understand? I had a very interesting conversation with one of the writers in a session we had with Dr. Ndemo, and he does publishing for books. And you're saying the first time he wrote the children's book, total failure. They did not sell, people did not pick them up, he was giving them even for free, and they were not being asked. They were not being used. So the second time he said, let me not give up on this. Let me go talk to the teachers, the ones who will be using these books. Let me talk to these young kids, the ones who will be reading these books. Find out, what can make this more interesting for you. Because you're making a product that is it's not for you. I'm not going to make a product that is for June, because June is not the only person who's going to use it. I'm making a product that is going to be used by a lot of people. And when he involved the stakeholders in what he was doing, the difference was instant, because now he was being able to incorporate his knowledge, his expertise, but also for the people who are going to use it. Some of the presentations that I get, when you listen, the person who has made that application understands it himself because he made it, like you're the person who's going to use it. So unless you're making that product for you, which would not be the reality, you need to look at the stakeholders in your industry, in what you're doing, and how they're going to be able to do it. And again, as we said, take that initial step. Successful entrepreneurs are those who take the extra, do the extra rather. And extras can be so many things. Attending a training on public speaking, it might not seem like something that will be interesting, but you'll be presenting to people. You'll be doing a presentation in front of somebody who needs to understand what you're talking about. Financial management, you'll be getting money. I was dividing the money they've been paid by in cash, there was a tele. And you hope that they are looking ahead. Do they understand what they need to do with that money? You know, because it's now in cash, almost 14 million per person. You know, negotiating every other day. Newer products are being used that are not even of quality because the person who has made a product or is selling a service has not taken the time to understand, how do I negotiate with my sellers? How do I negotiate with my buyers? You know, customer service, marketing. What other options? How in front of people are you placing yourself? Do I know what you're doing? Do I understand how simple it is to use? Does it make sense for my business? Those are the questions that we need to ask. So I hope I leave you with something that you can be able to ask. I invite you to our resource center in Hurlingham, Jabavu House. Our website is smeafrica.net. Let's keep this conversation flowing. I hope to hear more stories of people who have become more successful. Either their companies or applications were bought out, or they have been able to get more customers, but they made a difference because entrepreneurship right now is the solution to many of the issues that we're facing. We've gone through the whole list of donors. You know, they've come, they started programs that have not worked. We are the ones who have the solutions for what we need to do. So thank you very much. Anyone who has a question?
We can do the
yes,
question.
just after me. Okay, thank you so much.
Just to let you know that the difference between a business guru and a startup is that the guru has failed many more times. So that is what she was saying, that you must fail, you must fail before you can walk. So Lee, it's your time, then we can have questions.
Okay, morning everybody. My name is Lee Gashomba, as Prof has said. I am with ABC Bank. I'm actually running the SME banking unit for the bank. And it's a pleasure to see you guys. In my head, I was wondering, I was trying to figure out how inside IHub looks like. I'm pleasantly surprised, not as dull and gray as a bank environment. Yeah, it's good to see you guys. I am referring to a couple of notes because, as Prof has said, as Prof has threatened, I shall be torn into pieces, so I need to be very well prepared. I want to take a few minutes just to talk about my thoughts and a couple of thoughts that in the industry we are banding around about what do we see our relationship with an institution like IHub to be. And I'd like to add that this is just the present status of that kind of relationship. I don't at all feel that it is a correct status, and I think there's going to be some improvement, hopefully, as we start to interact. I think when bankers think of IHub, we look at it in terms of two broad buckets. We would like to relate to you as your customers. And secondly, we would also want to relate to you as financial partners or financial lenders. And we talk about customers. I think banks would be very interested in partnering with IHub or with app developers around anything that can give us solutions that help us to accelerate our speed to market. By that I mean, if we have identified a particular segment of society that we want to get into, and you have a solution that allows us to do that. Yeah? I'll give an example. I think most banks have been thinking that the various value chains you have, you know, like the distributor chains, the wholesalers chains are important people to bank. And there's a lot of opportunity for banks to make money. But rather than spend 5 years trying to figure out how to do it, there could be a very simple solution. And I think Wazatela had a supply chain, part of the app was addressing the supply chain management. So that is something that would interest banks from a customer's perspective. The other thing that really banks are looking at in terms of partnership solutions that allow them to roll out their products using alternative channels. As it is in Kenya today, most banks are reaching customers through branches, that is brick and mortar. And if you, I mean, I don't know whether you are aware, but a branch would cost about roughly between 20 million shillings and 40 million shillings to set up an outfit. Yeah? Now that does not make sense, especially now that we are having devolution going on, for me to imagine that we are going to grow our branches by another 30. It doesn't make sense. But suppose you were to give me a solution that turns a local shopkeeper into a branch. That is something definitely banks would look at. And I think some are ahead of others in terms of that thought process. How can we turn the existing people on the ground into mini branches? There's an opportunity there for anybody in this room. The other way we look at it is, what gives me competitive advantage as a bank? Is there a solution that will give me an edge over my rivals? Yeah? I think an example I can think of was one of the banks that designed an application that allowed them to assess lending and borrowing using psychometric measures. You know, they would come and find out what kind of person you are, what are your behavioral tendencies, and they would be able to roll out something. That is a competitive edge. Yeah? And that would actually interest banks. The other area which I think is of more interest to us this morning is the relationship in terms of lender-customer. Yeah? And I think this is one that has really been slow in developing. And Prof, like you mentioned, I think it's a shame that other areas in Africa actually are ahead in terms of the banking industry, being able to roll out solutions that are practical and actually assist in this kind of space. So I'd like today to just take a few minutes to talk about what is our perception as banks. Why are we having such challenges in embracing this space? Yeah? And I want us to look at these challenges as, you know, the way your child is unable to walk. you pity them. You know, you don't, you try to help them. That's how I want us to look at these challenges today. Because I think this is an important conversation to have, that you get to hear, at least this morning from the industry. How are we perceiving you? And then we can start the conversation from there. I think one of the major challenges we have is predominantly when approached by an apps developer, there is a lack of borrowing or credit history. Yeah? We cannot ask you to show us a statement of some loan you took somewhere, because most probably this will be your first loan. Yeah? And we really need to think creatively about how to go around that, rather than making it a stumbling block from availing much needed finance. The other one is the business model. You know, bankers today, by virtue of the fact that these models have been there, they understand. If you talk about somebody who is distributing soda, I know how that person makes money. I know how he gets customers. I know his challenges. If today you were to put me in front of an apps developer, I would really struggle to understand where is the value. Yeah, and maybe it's because I have not taken the time to understand that. But I'm a reflection of the industry when you say that we are actually having challenges just to understand where is the value in the way you conduct the business. Yeah? And I'm hoping that at the end of this talk, we can actually have a talk on how to actually have that. Related to the issue of value is something I'd like to call skin in the game. So you've come to me and you require maybe 20 million or 50 million shillings. And the first question I'll ask you is, how much have you put in yourself? And because we have traditionally, our customers will tell us, yes, I've put 10 million shillings, this is my fund, this is my stock, this is my this. But for you, I mean, the value is more intrinsic, it's more intangible. It's the idea. Now, how are we able to capture that value as bankers and say, yes, we feel that what you have done so far, or the kind of thought process you're having around this app actually has a value for us to support. The other issue is the transaction cost. What do I mean by this? If I was to lend you money, I need to understand how you operate. How do I monitor that you're doing well? How do I ensure that you're not going to call me tomorrow and tell me, oh, by the way, this thing has failed and I can't pay you? Yeah? So the cost, and this is just a perception. Yeah? We imagine as bankers that we have to hire some expertise to help us monitor the life cycle of your development. At what stage shall we say, indeed, okay, this is now going well. You can actually pump in more money. What are the characteristics we look for? Yeah. So there is that feeling that there's some expertise that banks don't need, which they have to hire, which might be expensive. The other one is what I call repayment, because every debt, every kind of financial support obviously attracts some kind of repayment. So again, it goes back. Do we have structures where people can repay us monthly? Is that practical? Or are we looking at being paid when, for example, a Wezatele transaction happens, or when you successfully sell something? Yeah, those are the things that we grapple with. And if you look at typically a bank will make money by the interest it levies on that debt. So how will we collect it? Yeah? And I think those 5 would be the major issues. And I'd like to point out that all banks are not in one space thinking that these are challenges. I think some banks have made the stride, others are behind, and it's natural. You probably see 1 or 2 banks or 3 banks coming in, and the others will follow. What's the way forward? I think forums such as this are extremely important, so that we can start to have that conversation. And I believe at the end of the day, when banks do come on board, and in whatever structure that they decide to come on board, it'll have to be a solution that is collaboratively arrived at. It cannot be my way, or it cannot be the bank's way, and they're all saying now, if we want to be partners, this is how we are going to do it. It's got to be what's practical, what works for both of us, so that one person is not left feeling pinched. The other way forward probably would also be, I think, where Prof talks about mentoring, so that developers move from this is a good idea and it's got potential to this is actually an idea that is business. It actually can create business. It has potential customers. It has an income profile. Yeah, so something can start as a good idea, and then it moves into a business idea that now can be funded. Yeah. Banks will need to develop. You mentioned it, Prof. Actually, when you said that somebody needs to take risk. Banks need to develop, or to say, a portion of my lending portfolio has got to be high risk, or whatever I want to call it, and geared towards this sector. That would be the start. To say, if I have a lending portfolio of $100 million, $10 million straight away goes to apps guys. Then we figure out how we are going to do that. I think that's an important thing. The last thing also, I have seen, especially when the industry is developing lending guidelines through our regulator, that is the Central Bank of Kenya. I have seen people coming in. I'll give an example. I've seen agricultural, people in the agricultural industry coming in to say, you know what, we want to be in these discussions when you guys are discussing how to structure loans too. I think ICT has largely kept away. Yeah? And we want to see guys coming in and say, how can we have a conversation even if it's the regulator or Kenya Bankers Circle? How can we start asking you guys to set aside some kind of training, yeah, for your people so they can understand us? So I think there's also been a feeling of you guys are not helping us. Let us stay in our corner here. And we point fingers, and then the banks also say, you guys are a very unstructured lot. We point fingers. I think now we have agreed, now we now need to start collaborating. I think, talk to us, tell us, where do you want us, where do you envision us to help? You have heard our side of the story, this is how we look at you. But honestly, we do see a lot of potential. Yeah. Thank you. I think, I don't know whether there's questions. Okay.
I actually said earlier that the Moroccan model, where the bank invests in the incubator and monitors to see what can be a product out of the 50 or 100 incubatees. And then you are the first ones actually to benefit from there. We want the banks to move from staying far to actually beginning to interact, like this interaction here. They have billions which they don't know how to use. One of the new areas is big data analytics or monetization of big data. Today, the company that knows who is a good person to lend to is not a bank. It's actually Safaricom through their Okoa Jahazi. Actually, they know June base. So June, I can take a risk to lend to. But that data is private to them. And what we've been saying, somehow the government needs to put a law that that data is anonymized and put out there. Because if these people get access to that data, they would help the government with respect to transportation systems, understanding our behavior on where we drive to. I looked at the data once, and I concluded if the government gives the Catholic Church 1 billion, we would save 10 billion, because 1 billion and a requirement that Strathmore, St. Mary's, Musongari, Kianda are duplicated in Ruiru, from Mombasa Road and from Ngong. Because people drive from Ngong, from wherever, to Kiandas, St. Mary's and whatever, and they clog the entire Wayaki Way, and then it comes to the city. Have you driven in April, August and December when the schools are closed? You drive through. That is from data. But they have not monetized this, they have not given it to these people to create products, and you have data about us banking with you. Enormous data. If you anonymize it and give it to them, they will create several other products. So we cannot afford to stay apart. We must be together and feed these people with the data. Actually, their heads think 0 and 1. They don't want to know who defaulted and whatever. But with that data, they will be able to create products. And those products is where you get money from. But for them to be able to create that, they must be sustained. And that is my greatest concern, to sustain them, to be able to develop, meaning that someone to pay them to pay for their rent, to pay for their food, to come up with that product. And this is what we are saying. If there is an incubation center where they enroll from what they have been doing, and they are given enough money to go around, they would think properly. But not that they don't think properly, but now they have to think, where am I going to get transport and doing this? This is what is missing. And this is the ecosystem. We need the private sector there, bring the data. We need the government there with the policy, and the government also saying we would consume your products. Actually, the whole economy would grow. The whole economy will become more efficient. We would make the right decisions, the decision like investment in the schools, so that you reduce the costs of transportation when people are staying on the traffic jams. So let's hear the questions from you. Me, I've told him what he needs. Maybe next he would come to tell us is that we want to support an incubation center. If government takes a risk and also puts a little money. Mathwali. Yes, sir. Give it.
My question to you is, you're thinking in terms of traditional lending, where you have interest rates. Have you thought of something like venture capital, like what Ndemo was saying, so that you can evaluate opportunities in a different light, in terms of equity and whatnot?
Thank you. That's a good question. Hearing what especially has been said this morning, the first thing that came to my mind is that we may need to look, as banks, we may need to look at changing our model, because currently, the way we are structured, venture capital will be a bit difficult to do. Two reasons. Number one, the skill set available to properly analyze venture capital play does not exist in terms of cross-cutting in the industry. Secondly, it's easier, let me just, to be frank, it's easier to make money just on interest rates from an existing customer. You see, as part of the process, the important thing then is to think about is debt as it is today the best solution for this space? The answer probably is no. Probably even as we are looking at my earlier point to talk about setting a specific portfolio for this, banks can actually, they actually can decide to set up and look at it from that point of view, where we take an equity risk. We look at it from an angel fund perspective. We talk about even funding existing angel and venture capital funds to take this particular kind of risk. Yeah. So there may be somebody who is out there who says, you know what, I have $10 million available to do this kind of thing. So what can banks do? How can we make that $100 million for you? Yeah, and instead of us focusing on trying to get those skills internally, there are already people in the market who can do that. Why can't we accelerate that fund? That's how I would think about it. But the answer to the question, banks have not thought that way. Yeah.
They are making too much money. So we need to reduce the actually every bank makes money every year.
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Judy, and I have just a basic question. Do banks support small enterprises? And if they do, what kind of small enterprises do you support?
Okay. The definition of small enterprise changes from bank to bank, but banks do support small enterprises.
And how?
Mainly it's been in two areas. One is what we call working capital. The funding that enables you just to move day to day, buy your stocks, pay your suppliers, and enable you to give credit to your customers. That's major. The other one has been obviously in assisting them to acquire assets, vehicles, buildings, develop some of their premises. I think basically that has been it. The other area probably would be whenever these small enterprises want to tender for businesses, banks would be in the space of issuing guarantees to this particular. But is your question more looking at enterprises that want to start up, or?
I just want to know, like, generally, the sectors that you support,
Yeah.
to see whether the IT sector would fit into it. The reason I'm asking this is because when many people are starting startups, especially in a space like this, the banks is the last place we go to. And since you are here, when I don't think we're at the level of actually having a conversation with the banks, or maybe we just don't know what to tell the banks because all we hear is bad stories. So, like, how can this interaction be more fruitful? Sorry?
Over the last couple of years, actually, banking industry has made significant strides in trying to address some of these concerns, like that word collateral. There are banks who are offering what is technically called unsecured facilities. Especially, I know a couple of products that say if you have delivered something, you've delivered a product or a service and you're just waiting for payment. How can I help you access cash to continue surviving as you're waiting for payment? Banks are already into that space, invoice discounting, and doing it without any collateral. Yeah, but it's I would say one. All sectors are supported. If I'm looking at the 46, 47 banks in the country, all of them have their sectors they're looking at. So you can actually say all sectors are supported. I don't think there's any bank that comes to mind that has specifically excluded IT.
So maybe to clarify, which bank would you recommend for a startup in the IT sector?
Which bank would I recommend?
Banks, so that you're not put on the spot.
It would really depend. It would really depend on, because the bank that I'd recommend to you is a bank that you feel you can have a conversation with. Yeah, that's number one. That getting somebody to sit down and listen to you actually happens. Secondly, that they are flexible enough to be your fair weather friend when it's raining and when it's not raining. Yeah, so I would not be in a position to say this bank can do this, and it would be selfish for me to say that ABC Bank would do that. But you'd have to get a bank that listens to your unique needs, and have a conversation with several banks. It doesn't hurt. Wow. Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Peter Olo. I'm a I develop solutions. I really want to hear your agenda in terms of you have in-house. I'll shout. Yeah, I would like to hear what is your roadmap in terms of investing in IT. Do you have in-house developers who write for you solutions? Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that many banks are now investing in cloud and mobility and big data. For example, I happen to be working in the aviation industry, and BA has really developed an app called Know Me, whereby they want to know the loyalty of passengers who travel on BA. Mm-hmm. Do you have a loyalty program or an app, or are you looking into that?
First question was what is generally the roadmap in terms of app development? In-house skills exist in quite a number of banks, but the rule is how critical or how core do I see that app? What role do I see the app play? Yeah? If it is touching what I would call my core banking activities, yeah, I would want to invest money as a bank and get the skill inside, just for purposes of proprietary issues. But I've seen a lot of banks, especially when you're looking at new opportunities that have opened up, especially in the county development, saying we are willing to partner. We have banks that have actually outrightly bought out app development companies if they feel that is the way to go. So the roadmap is aggressive in that space. The second question was whether banks are generally investing in big data. I don't think so. I think the only big data they're looking at is the data that they have internally. And I think today most of them are using it just to generate MIS. How is our product doing? Is it doing as well as we thought? But in terms of the opportunities that will be available in just looking at the data, and manipulating it in several ways, and trying to relate that data with data from partners and from other banks. I don't think we are doing that in a big way. But that is obviously something that we need to do.
The other question was whether you have in-house developers or not.
We do. We do for certain things. For certain things, it's easier just to outsource. But we do. Yeah.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
My name is Martin, and first of all, I'd like to thank you, our speakers, very much for the talk. It really provoked so much thought, and I'd probably be walking into a stumbling block, and many of my friends here, but maybe if you, with the right answer to my question, we might actually cross this bridge before you get there.
Okay.
So you talk of collateral, but as you can see, most of us here, we are youngsters, and most of us haven't made much of life. You can't say you have a plot or a house or a car somewhere we can give you as collateral. But will you consider intellectual property as collateral? I mean, if I'm confident in my product so much, and maybe you can also see that it's a good product, and the problem might be management. I may not be good at it, but you think maybe you can do a better work with it. So you can give me, let me try my luck. If I fail, you can take it.
Okay.
Yeah.
The straight answer.
Yeah, the intellectual property as collateral. Could they consider that?
Like intellectual property meaning the idea that you've had?
Yes, the
being
idea that
original and genuine and...
Yes, say for example, I had Facebook and they don't know how to develop it, and maybe you feel like the bank can do better if they invested in it by themselves.
Okay. I think the straight answer to that is presently, no. It would not be considered as collateral. But I know the thought process that's happening now is if you could get, right currently, now we are saying we have not started this conversation, and it is what it is right now. If you could get somebody to invest in your idea, yeah, even if it's 20% or 30% of the requirement, I know that there are banks who are having a conversation that we can top that up. That's the conversation. That's where it has reached right now. But in terms of you coming to the bank and you have this great idea, and you say your idea is actually what we look at in terms of security, collateral, and our way out. Currently, no. And that's what we need to start developing.
Remember that it's June also, if you have questions.
Oh, yes.
My question relates to, it's also a legal issue, as you said, it relates to intellectual property. I don't know if it's a question or more of a comment, but I think the banking and ICT sectors also need to, and the government also need to partner up with the legal experts, because intellectual property, as it says, I don't think it's as much developed in Kenya. If ICT expert, if the people who are developing apps were, for instance, educated on how to get their copyrights and other stuff, and copyrights, trademarks, all the IP things, then they can, it's more solid. It can be collateralized as a trademark rather than as an idea. And then generally I don't think the legal framework that relates to ICT and banking is as much developed in Kenya. So I think the government has not worked much on developing the laws that regulate the ICT sector, and I think that makes the government, the banks afraid, let's say, or they don't invest into the ICT sector that much. So I think the ICT people and the banks need to partner up with legal experts to come up with the laws and to see how they can regulate the sector, because when we have laws, then it's way easier to interact, because we generally know who has what obligation and what are the penalties for failing to work on your obligations.
Actually, it may not need laws. If we created a very strong ecosystem, which I talked about, the triple helix, where the government has genuine interest in what you're doing, and the private sector has genuine interest in what you're doing, it will drive. Sometimes if you over-legislate, it really works against you with over-legislation. But it's actually the will to do. Like I said, the Moroccan one is that the banks themselves have invested and taken the risk. Somebody has taken that risk. Government has taken that risk. But it has paid off because someone somewhere, there is no business that you can succeed without risk taking. And the government cannot hope that we would get entrepreneurs without actually investing in a risk venture, like getting the private sector, giving them comfort that I am here, and they put their money there. It's not really the law. It's the will to understand the youth and say we are investing in these people. Because if you see the program in Strathmore, the one sponsored by Safaricom, it is sort of succeeding because they took the risk and said we would invest in this. So someone has to somewhere take the risk. And you can't legislate risk. Risk is actually willing that I threw ipotea, but I'll put it in you and see that you succeed. The will. Is that okay, Amma? Okay, at the back.
Hi, my name is Robert. My question is on banking. There is what they call first-tier banks and second-tier banks. What can you say about the two tiers, and what problems do you think, what's the difference? And with the two tiers, which tier do you think will be more interested in startups and stuff like that, and what kind of startups? Because whoever was explaining to me about the tiers is like the two tiers are, tier one is banks that have kind of succeeded, I don't know how, in banking, and tier two is the banks that are trying to be tier one in future. So how do you think we can approach the two tiers of the banking sector?
He will answer, but I'll as Dr. Ndemo was just speaking. Now, when I think, if I'm not wrong, tier one and tier two is usually based on simply the bigger banks and the smaller banks. Now, in history, what we've come to discover and what we were discussing with Dr. Ndemo is that there were time, Equity, yes, did change the whole banking sector because they became more open to look at how can we be able to get more guys rather than try to compete in the same space that the usual traditional banks were there, the Standard Chartered, the Barclays, and such like, so that we can be able to do, to be able to get to that point where we are higher. Now, from our own experience as, working with entrepreneurs, what you've noticed is that now the banks that are a bit more interested in startups, and startups does not necessarily that you've not started the business, but you're still in the initial stages, 1 year, second year of running your business. It's going back to the traditional banks. And also banks like even ABC, who are now saying we are working with SMEs. Because at the end of the day, he said very clearly, we are in the business of making money. Now, to be able to make money, we have to be able to look at how do we attract the guys who are forming the bigger base of clientele that can be able to come in. So from my own experience, and also from what we were talking just before, researching, we need to be able to research more on who are in this space. Look at some Standard Chartered, ABC Bank, Barclays, they are becoming more and more friendlier. They're a bit more stable now. They can be able to put a bit more risk. It's just having that conversation and seeing how it can go.
You can know from seeing who has put a kibanda on the street looking for customers. A few years ago, you could not have seen a kibanda from big banks. But when the smaller banks began to create new customers, you realize most of these big banks closed at county level. They actually closed their branches there. They said there are no people there who can bank. And suddenly, after the small banks went there, they are there because the customer has been developed by small. Maybe you have a different view.
No, I think my view, okay, one, there are actually 3 tiers, and it's all about the kind of balance sheet size that the banks have. That's how they have been divided. And to your question, which of these tiers would be interested, I think all would be interested, but for various reasons. Some would be more interested in forming partnerships with developers who are creating solutions that, as earlier said, give them a competitive advantage. Others would be looking at you as customers, as an untapped source of customers. So all would be interested, but for different reasons.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Edward, first of all, and I have 2 questions. And the first one is, okay, I'm more of a developer than an entrepreneur. So what are the factors you consider when you want to maybe sell an app? How do you arrive to the value? That is the first question. The second question is, in terms of finance and product development, what are the things that you consider in order to make your tech business successful in the long term? Thank you.
I'll speak about, as you say, can everyone hear me? Or you can use this one. All right, I'll talk about, as you're saying, being able to, you're a developer, you're not an entrepreneur. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, you need to be able to sell your product and get it out there. So normally what you can do, and I'm using this from the experience as SME Resource Center, where we help a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs. I have this idea to do business, I want to be able to start it, to be able to transition from aspiring to a startup. And it always follows the same kind of things, because at the end of the day, who is your customer and how are you going to be able to get them? Have you registered your business? Because no one will deal with June Gadoni, but I'll deal with a company because it looks a bit more stable. How will I be able to market it? How will I be able to network with others who can be able to connect me to somebody who's going to be able to buy my product? So yes, your core bit, and what I'm trying to communicate is that being a developer is not different from me as a furniture seller. I start making it, that is my core thing. I can make very good furniture, but I need to be able to sell that furniture. And it follows the same bit. For my furniture to be sold, how do I get to my customers? And that's where now it comes in raising your skills in business management, being able to speak to these customers, being able to look at other opportunities that you can be able to push your product out there, being able to get more skills. And getting skills can be on training, it can be speaking to other people who have been successful in the same place, it can be just having a conversation, one-on-one conversation. If you made a product that is supposed to be used in agriculture, talking to that farmer and understanding, with this product, does it fit in to what you have? So I would like to say that normally the transition is just being able to look at that fact. You have your core, you have your passion, you have the product, but there's no way that it can get out of there. And sometimes people say, I can employ people to do this for me. But if you're looking to be a true entrepreneur, you also have to understand these processes. When we talk about marketing, even if at some point I'll be able to employ that person to market, what does it mean? Because no one will ever represent your product better than yourself. I hope I've answered your question.
Okay, so there's no general formula for calculating the value.
No. Let me tell you this. There is a saying, I don't know who said it. If you want to travel faster, you travel alone. If you want to go very far, you travel with your cousins or what? But it's around that. I don't know who said it. But what it says, and this is I see several PhD guys here. They will tell you that the Lone Ranger mentality that we have here cannot make us succeed. Actually, when you come up with something, if you look at the developers of Facebook, did you see the movie, the Zuckerberg? They got one from business, they got another from, and then they developed it. Like you now, you can bring in other people with different skills so that you cover. You bring somebody who thinks about money and nothing about money. And you think about technology and nothing about technology. So this other one is spending time to find how to monetize. The other one is looking how to market. That's how you succeed. There is no one single bullet that will give you that you do it as a lone ranger and succeed. You cannot learn to be an entrepreneur. Sometimes entrepreneurs are just born, and sometimes. Do you have any answer to that?
It's okay. I think that was more. I think you guys have captured very well in terms of because I would really struggle to app developer, but I think they have captured it very well. I don't think I have anything else to add on that.
Thank you.
Coming to the SME Resource Center, right? Just see how it works. Speak to other people. You have to get out there to be able to look at it. As you say, there's no simple formula. You have to put in the work and the time and look at those kind of things. Yeah, Karibu.
Hello, my name is Nasibi. My question is for you, June. I'm sure I'm not speaking for myself. I'm speaking for a lot of us here that we had no idea that you actually exist, SME Resource Center. And my question is, what are the efforts you're putting out to make it known to the public that you're out there, that you have a service that you can give to SMEs, and how are you spreading the word out? Like, do you go out like when Safaricom has their tours, when they do these concerts, have you thought of partnering with them and just like having a showcase of what you're doing?
Yes. I mean, as any other business, we've not gotten it to 100%. It's still a resource center that is growing out there. And what we're trying to do is that we've been working a lot in just using the usual platforms for marketing, social media. There's a time we did a lot of traditional marketing until, the newspapers, until we realized the people who need our services, he's the business manager, he's the marketer, he's the salesperson, he's the tea lady. So if they do not understand the product that we have, it's hard for them to be able to come in. So we've been looking at a lot of these kind of forums because they create that opportunity. 70% of the people we are working with, as I said, are usually aspiring and startups themselves. Across all sectors, guys who are looking to, I want to be able to walk this business journey and to be able to have a successful bit. I always say, and he's been able to affirm it, when you do it and you find yourself doing that alone, waking up every day just thinking about your business, sometimes not looking at what other options that are actually there. But when you come in and have a discussion with me, for example, I am not invested in your business. There are options that we'll be able to see that can be able, you had never thought about it. And, we go through those kind of things. So I would say that we are now really, of course, getting out there. When we started our programs our business the Resource Center started in 2009. We actually started from outside Nairobi, coming to Nairobi. Most of our programs started from outside because we said, they're business people outside Nairobi itself, we would want them to be able to access this program. So it's been that way for about almost 2 years. And then now, of course, we are incorporating Nairobi and its environment. So we'll be, we are pushing it out. I'll look at that option for Safaricom. It could be a very interesting bit to be able to get a lot of things because Kenyans are entrepreneurs. Kenyans who love doing business. People are looking to do business. It's just how do I do it and do it well that I can be able to say I have a successful enterprise.
I'm just curious, is there a cost to accessing your resources? If yes, how much? If not, then what's your business model?
SME Resource Center is what we call a for-profit company. but with a social enterprise behind it, meaning the programs that we do have to have an impact. Now, the first step we normally do is encourage people to become SME Business Club members. Registration is usually 1,500, which is annually renewable. Then when you become a member, we have a one-on-one interaction with, you have a one-on-one interaction with a business coach. The whole idea for that conversation is to be able to understand you who has joined the SME Business Club. Where are you? Are you about to start a business, or are you already running a business? If the challenges that you're facing, what are they? If, you know, what's your next 5-year plan? So that now we build what we call an entrepreneurship chart that can be able to guide you in the programs that you can be able to access at the resource center to help you to reach that point. The other programs within that, you know, we're talking about networking, the business coaching, events that we do, income generating opportunities that we look at, so that are actually payable based on the program or the chart. But the first step is usually becoming a member, having that conversation with a business coach, then we give you the entrepreneurship chart.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You do not have permission, but you go ahead.
Sorry, my name is David. Also to thank you for this forum and for the guests, speakers. I think this is more or less like an observation. For the startups and the SMEs, the challenge sometimes comes, even if you get the loan, is the interest rate. That the 16–18% is, at the end of the day, it's when you want to start paying it back, you find that it eats all into your margin. And the business person or the startup, the entrepreneur may not be in a position to pay back the loan. So perhaps if the banks also can think about, and I think this is something that had already been flouted here, that you can have like a certain percentage of your funds to target this particular niche of the market, because you can charge them a little interest, and then after a while, when their business grows now, then you can go and charge them the bigger one, you know, for the bigger business people. So I think that's, and because this is the challenge, you find that most of them get driven to go maybe take money from microfinances, which at the end of the day still has the same challenges, because you find that if you default, I have a real example of them taking away my aunt's only cow and chicken and everything. I don't want to name the name of the microfinance institution, but it's very serious because they mostly operate in the rural area. So I think if the banks can be able to, because many people want to start businesses, but they have no capital. But even if they want to access it, the interest rate is just so high. So that's my observation.
Thanks for that observation. I think I agree with you that the way forward is to create a very specific portfolio of funds that has very different characteristics from what you have as the normal debt parameters that we are operating currently. So that would be the way to go ideally. And actually, if you think about it, even if you were to say that you're given a holiday of sorts in terms of repayment, you know, as money is given and then you're given some time to actually build the business to a critical level where you can actually now make the payments. That's the kind of structure we'd look at. That, for me, would be most ideal. Just a general comment on interest rates. Interest rates, yes, they are high, but it's not principally because of the banks. The banks do play a role, but we also have some kind of inefficiencies in the market. Yeah, so which need to be addressed from a macro perspective for just interest rates to go down. And even if you look at it, even margins, forget now, if you step outside the banking industry, even the kind of profits we are seeing, yeah, that people are selling items even in supermarkets at 100% markup. Generally, I think there's a problem with the way we are pricing our goods, our services, be it loans, be it unga, be it anything. There's just a major problem that needs to be addressed. from macro level. But I agree with you. Specific portfolio, specific characteristics.
You remember you made noise at one supermarket over the weekend. Yeah, there's a gentleman there, and then you go back. Yeah, then you give it back.
My question is...
Louder.
Okay, my question is, we find that most entrepreneurs in Kenya are dealing with several products. I mean, today I'm selling a different product, tomorrow I'm selling a different product. So I don't know how the mentorship program for such a person is. And for the banks, most of the time, these guys even bank with you guys. How are you able to trace and know the exact business they are doing? And apart from that, the entrepreneurs I know are guys from the Vibandas. I would cite Equity and Safaricom are taking advantage of those guys, and those are the real entrepreneurs, because maybe they are selling food and these small items like cutlery and juakali products. So what's your take on that, and how are we going to formalize them so that you gain advantage of them?
Okay. I mean, that is such a big problem. You have actually touched a nerve. You know, if today everyone is doing quills, we are all doing quills. If today everyone is doing mangoes, it is such a big problem. And one of the main business coaching that we do program is that to be able to understand, by the time you're getting into the business that you're looking at, do you have the drive? Do you have the passion? Do you have the expertise or the focus to be committed to that business for 20 or 30 years? Because the reality of it is that, and I always like using this example, Chris Kirubi now is a DJ and owns Capital FM. But before he got to that point that he's buying Capital FM and to do DJing, Hardcore Industry had been operational and as his main business for the longest time possible. Meaning, if today Capital FM crashed, are we saying Chris Kirubi would not have money? His business is set and it's standing up. We have to be dedicated to the kind of business that we're doing, so that every day you're becoming an expert in what you're doing. You cannot become an expert if you're doing something for 6 months and then you move into something else. Biashara ilienda vibaya. You know, or whatever is, if somebody is having a very good salon, you jump, and we do that a lot. It is actually happening. It's one of the biggest problems that we have with even club members who somebody has started, either they're doing well or they're not doing well, and they're already looking to get into something else. That totally messes up that whole process flow. So yes, we have a program and coaching where we are encouraging, and it always starts from the point that you're saying, I am getting into business. How sure are you? Because business is a whole curve. When it's here down, because when it gets to that point, and it does get to that point, that you still have that focus and commitment to that business to actually wait for it to be able to get up. And they say that we need to be able to be looking out there. Most of the businesses that are there, by the time Richard Branson is having 300 companies, there's that one company that he stayed with and struggled with and, put it all to a point that, he says, regardless of, if I start something else, if I go to something else, I've already learned this process. Yeah, that's what I can say about it. Yeah.
I think there's a question here asked
on
how do banks really know what their customers are doing. I think two ways. One, most banks, what is happening now because of the competition in the industry, you have to go out and get customers. So if you go to Gikomba, then you recruit those as customers. You get an understanding of what they do. Secondly, also we try to if we've not gotten a customer by getting the market, we try and have conversations with them just to understand. Because if we understand your business also as customers, then it's possible for us to give you the correct kind of solutions. If we don't understand, you'll be caught in a situation where you are being given a medicine for a disease that you're not suffering from. Was that it? Then the other question was, what are banks specifically doing to get the smaller size entrepreneurs? I think that, just as June has said, in the same way that entrepreneurs need to be committed and focused on the kind of business they're doing, banks also have identified specific sectors. Yeah, of what, so not all banks are going for that kind of business, and mainly because some of them are not, they do not have representation in those areas. So it becomes very difficult. But you find some banks have invested in that particular, and they're doing it very well. And if you look at it, it is because some banks refuse to look at that sector that banks like Equity are now where they are. Yeah? So it's what you look at as your specific sector.
How are you? One, let me say I'm proud of you, because majority of you, I'm a guest today. You are youngsters, and you can think big, you can see all those things you are seeing. Today I want to suggest some opinion. I think it's an opinion. I want to give some opinion. Already you have heard there is a niche whereby they are looking for a seed capital. This week I saw KEPSA was discussing with the Vice President issue to do with corporate social investment and Kenya sustainability.
1%.
That's what we're talking about. I think what you can do as banks, America, they are doing it, and I think we have been overtaken for more than 30 years, 20 years. Because you go with a business plan in a Bank of America, or Wells Fargo, which is a bank, or Washington Mutual, and you tell them, this is the business plan I have. They call them virgin business. Virgin business. And out of that, they can give you a credit line. That credit line, you can do your business and repay and do all that. So they don't even need to know much. So it's a seed capital, just like how banks like ABC, and I think that there is an opportunity. I think when you need to come, you need to package something. You can hear what the youngsters are talking about. Can you package something so that they can get the funding as a seed capital? Because what I'm looking for is to see that they see a seed capital, whatever small it is. So if there is corporate social investment, this time not responsibility, because responsibility is more PR, there can be 100 million or little money you can set aside to give these youngsters as, or innovators and developers, as a seed to do whatever they are doing. It maybe could have been a part of your corporate social responsibility money, just like how people get boreholes, t-shirt, foods. That money doesn't come back to you, and you spend a lot of money. Yesterday I heard that the government have helped today, because there is celebration in Nyeri, at a tune of 130 million. 130 million? Because there is a celebration of a blessed, I'm not having any problem with the blessed lady, he was doing good work, but I'm trying to imagine. I don't know even when the president visited this place, what did you tell him? See, I heard he came, I don't know whether it was impromptu, but he had visited this place. What did you talk about it? Because I think Professor have talked about what the government can leverage. So those are some of the things. Another thing which I have thought, me, kitu ile niliona when I came to this place was this map. This map. What are you doing in this map? What is its need here? What does it do here?
There's so many businesses out of
But me, I'm looking on the map. Because when you go to the bus stations, bus stops, in US, in India, in Europe, we see such a map. So I'm trying to imagine, as this center, because it's looking for some setup, startups, and seed capital, is there anything they can do with this map, that whatever they decided to do, either through the Ministry of Transport? You know, me, I was seeing the map, and I saw the same, almost the same map in Houston, but actually it is in the bus stops, and people can able to know the direction. So by so doing, has it generated anything in this center, in this IHub? Is there anything that have been accrued by having this map?
Yes.
If yes, what else? What that kind of a partnership? Because I'm looking how we can have partnerships. How can we have partnership with the government to see that IHub, because it came with this, or whoever innovated this, but there are some equity probably which will come, royalties which will come to IHub, can be put to the city of Nairobi, and the people can be able to see in the bus stop, this is the direction. Kuna watu wanaulizanga watu maswali. Unaenda hapi? Nasema utapiga kona, utapanda hivi, matatu ziko wapi, but now they can see. Because that's what you see in Europe, that's what we see in America. Then, because the banker, who is in SME, our friend, you have said, maybe that's not what you're doing. I know David Kuria probably have come here, but can Acumen Fund, other people come here who are social investors? Me, I'm more interested in social investors who can give money, not because they want profit, maybe because they want to help. There is another different stories in the South. But my opinion is social investors can come in, we can utilize these things, and maybe the government can do further. You can replicate such maps all over the cities in Kenya, and then they become, every time you do this, they give like 100 million or some money towards the center, and that money can be used to you as you are being incubated. That's my opinion, that's my thinking.
Yeah. Thank you for the challenge. We, at the SME Resource Center, tried a program, or rather, we've been trying a program since 2010 called CSR with a Difference. And the whole idea was that we approach corporates and say, fine, the CSR that you've been giving out, you take, as you're saying, the ungas, which will be done on that day, or some food stuff. Can you be able to look at other opportunities? Support youth groups to start business. We were actually looking at those kind of bits. There are organizations that have come on board. There are organizations, of course, who are very strict on, or rather are very set on the way they are doing. The fact that now through KEPSA, which is a sector body that works with, of course, the top dogs who we call in business, meaning that they're looking at those CSR as investment option, it means the space becomes even much bigger. And even to be able to add, as you're saying, financing can be looked at so many different ways. You who's a developer, you who's an app developer that is in a certain industry, can also look at your customers as investors into it. Because me as a person who's in business, my bit to be able to outtake or outrun my competitor is that extra edge that I have. Wouldn't I be interested in investing in a program or an application that can be able to give me that edge? Those are the conversations, and that's why I'm encouraging a lot, being able to speak to your stakeholders, because you might find that there are other sources of revenues that are not looked at that could be of interest. I can be able to invest and put you there to make sure that your work is to be able to come up with something that makes me do best or make more money. I know, I'm throwing it out there.
I think I want to address myself to the issue of seed capital by way of corporate social investment, or the word that you don't like to hear, corporate social responsibility. There could be a space for that, but I have a different approach, or rather different thought process, which is there's a lot of value, yeah? There's a lot of practical value in this kind of setup that does not need us to look at it from a kind of a handout perspective. There's actually businesses that can be funded, and they are profitable if given an opportunity. And the rigor that goes with assessing that kind of business, because if I'm giving you money, I want to make money, there's a certain stretch I bring into the process, and you also benefit from it. But if you can imagine, if I just have a program that says anybody who comes to me in this particular way, I'll give $100,000. I don't do the developer any justice, because I'm not giving him an opportunity to actually test his idea with a third party who is not emotionally connected. Yeah. So there could be a space, but I see a very small space for that. I'd rather we look at having a sustainable arrangement where this is a good idea, it has a practical use, it's actually a business, and it should be funded, and it should be funded at a cost like any other business idea, and it should make money and should be encouraged. I think what people are looking for, is the opportunity for them to be looked at, to be assessed at in a different way that makes sense. Because we are saying the way we are assessing in the banking industry is not helping, because we are asking for collateral. So what is the other way that we can assess you and still be able to support you? That's the approach maybe I would look at.
I'll come to there is a new basis.
Thank you. Mine is more of a comment. I'm wondering, since you guys don't have the capacity to fund us, can you create maybe a product, or how do I put it? Create a product whereby I want to build an app for real estate. Can't you get me a meeting with all your guys in real estate, and let's talk with them. I tell them, this is what I have, this is how it can help you. And for you, don't need to worry about your real estate guys, because I'm helping them address a problem, and they might be able to repay the loans that you have given them faster. Okay. So my question to that is, do you have such an opportunity for us? And if not, how can we go and create that space?
I think that's a fantastic idea, where you're saying that if you come to me, I may not see value, and I might have a problem. But if I expose you to my clientele, they might say, oh, by the way, that's something, like June said, that is something we've been looking for. And suddenly, value is created in a simple conversation where the bank decides, let me let you speak to some of my customers, some of my partners. That's something that we can do. It's something, and that's why these forums are important, so that such ideas can come out, and we test them, and we see.
This is why I said they should not let their data to rot. That data must be analyzed, disaggregated, such that if you want to get real estate developers, it's just a click of the button, and then you are able to do. This is why I'm saying you have so much data that that will do wonders to these people. Yeah. Then 3 questions, then we finish it. Yeah, we go straight to back.
It's okay. Thanks, Professor. My first question will go to June. June, when you were just starting, you talked about, you've been looking for somebody who can do for you an app. Can you just go through it again? Yeah, because I'm sure there are guys here who can do it. To my friend from the bank, I happen to have known your former Chief Information Officer, Martin. And sometimes to convince the top people who make decisions on behalf of the bank in terms of investing in technology is not easy. They'll tell you, why spend 100 million, why spend this money to fund app developers while you can use that money to open a branch. Do you think you'll be able to convince them that they invest on app developers from IHub?
Simply put, what we are looking for is that, as I said, our main core program is called the SME Business Club. Now, the SME Business Club, of course, a lot of people join in, and they all, we work with them in different entities. We are looking to be able to say, 5 years from now, if June Gathoni became a club member, we're able to collect her information. She came in, she was straight from university. By the second year or the first year, she was able to start a business in real estate or furniture making. She has been able to come to some events. She's been able to partner with some of our, SME club members. She's been able to, because we also assist in financing, referring them to financial capacity or funds that they can be able to assess. Just being able to assess all these programs. Can we be able to use the data that has been collected? Because it's very tedious. Right now, it's either on paper or on Excel or something like that. Something simpler that can be able to collect this information, and at the push of the button, we can say, in 2023, June Gathoni has actually been able to go through all these programs. And you see, we are always continuously getting back their data. The training that I came in, this is what it did for me. We put it up there, and be able to come up with a profile. In simple terms, it's like big data, because even us as an organization, the only way we can be able to be competitive is to ensure that the programs that we're giving our customers, especially the members, are pertaining, are very important to them. So that's what we're looking at. Again, as I said, we've had various conversations. What is presented is not what we're looking at. And sometimes is that what else are farming? You need to be able to put yourself in my shoe, in the SME Resource Center. You're creating a product for SME Resource Center. How do they want them to work? Not how you feel it should work. How do they want it to work? So yeah, karibuni to all those who want to pitch.
Okay, how IT budgets typically get squeezed because of priority issues. Yeah, like you're saying, what will be the priority this year? We have many competing priorities. We have one pot. So typically, what tends to happen, especially if the story about what you want to do with this IT spend is not well articulated, then it obviously it gets. But what's happening increasingly? All banks there's a significant year-on-year increase on IT because people are realizing that IT is no longer not a department. We're not talking about a department. We're moving away from that kind of thinking to it is a strategy. It is a thing. It is a future. You will not be able to do that business you call banking without IT and without significant spend on IT, without significant spend on upgrading and developing apps. So it's becoming the thing to invest in. And it's, I mean, the other day I think I saw a bank spend $25 million on storage. Storage. Not the app.
They should not
storage.
They should not store. They should give it to us and do something. I think some of you know the British government has licensed the first fully digital bank. It has no branches. And we are, I'm trying to know how it functions and see whether we can disrupt these people and then they start talking to us. Okay.
Okay, my name is Samuel, and I have a question to the banker, Lee. Now, in your assessment model, have you checked the link between how cash flow can be used to assess the startup or the customer? Because I believe cash flow is the lifeblood of every business, and when you give me a loan as a bank, from that cash flow I'll be able to grow and you'll be able to be paid your interest. Now, relating also to that, have you tried to look at how probably a business that whose cash flow is growing, let's say gradually or marginally, can be given an interest rate based on the rate of return for the business? So that probably that interest rate of, let's say 15%, if a business is growing, let's say at 33%, then it definitely means they can pay their loans. And that's called the need for reducing the rate of interest. And I think everyone will benefit from that.
Okay. Risk levels. Okay, you can give the back while he's answering.
Okay, the first question is, what is the role of cash flow in our assessment? I think it is extremely primary. In fact, we do not lend where we feel there is no sufficient cash flow for you to not only just repay your debt, but even to survive. Yeah. The issue of collateral becomes more an issue of suppose the cash flow stops coming because it's a significant event that has happened in your business and you have to close or something happens. What's the second way out? So typically banks will not make decisions to lend because you have the security. I usually give this example. Yeah, where there's a story given that somebody comes to the bank and says, I want to buy Kenyatta International Conference Center. And Kenyatta International Conference Center will be the security. So please, can you lend me? You see, typically if security was the only concern, then I should be able to lend, because then I should tell him, yeah, I'll give you money if you give me that as a security. But bankers will typically look at cash flow. Now, on the issue of, you raise a good question. If we look at the business's return, can we match our lending, or rather the price of the loan, to what you're making? Unfortunately, there's a cost. You see, banks don't lend their own money. They lend customer deposits. And there's a cost to getting that deposit. You know, the conversation around interest usually ignores the fact that Kenyans typically request for quite high interest rates on their deposits. Even as we're talking about the lending, we usually do not include the fact that somebody will not put money in a bank unless they're getting 8%, 10%. This is the cost that's actually passed on to the borrowers. So yes, we look at and say,
but you give big time guys, you give them special interest. And if this one is clocking 30% return, isn't it a good bet that the risk is much low?
It depends on what stage of the business is at. If it's clocking 30% return based on a projection, it's not been a track record. If it's actual 30% return, I'll look at other factors also, not just the return. But there is no one size fits all. In fact, the correct way to look at it is based on the parameters of your business. What kind of interest rate should we give you? And then I'm going back to the earlier observation that we made, that because we want to support ICT sector, we need to look at it differently and not have conversations only based on interest. There's got to be other things. Yeah? I hope I've answered it.
I'm thinking, what if the banks in the States that are offering the value in the seed capital that you had talked about earlier, come here? My question is, do those banks know that we in Kenya are capable of maybe giving them business here? Has anyone sensitized them about us, that we actually exist, so they come here? Maybe that way, the banks here will see there is competition in that direction, and the copyright and all those things, we will be able to create a space where we'll push all the copyright, and we can have the idea as collateral. That's what I'm thinking.
They're here, they're aware, they're coming. But typically what has tended to happen is that they're focusing, I've seen their focus being more on large tickets than small tickets. But I've seen some funds coming in to say, we can do $250,000, $100,000, put it in a basket, in a portfolio. They're aware, they're here. And I think that's part of the reason why some banks have started to have these conversations around this space.
I had a question in reference to what you talked about. It was about big data analytics. You mentioned that for somebody to come up with a good product, they have to understand the need of the community. I believe we're in the age of data-driven. Our needs are data-driven. Now, without the data, I cannot know the needs of the people. Now, back to you. You have the data. I want, can you give your data? I'm taking as a sample of the other banks. Can I come to you, take your data, and I look at it, and then develop a product out of it that will be, that will address the need of the community? Can a bank give me, can a bank give me or another person your data and look at it to create a product without necessarily Yes, that's right. Thank you.
The major challenge, I think, would rotate around customer confidentiality. So we'd have to find a way of having that data, not having any kind of information that could lead you to make an assumption about who that data belongs to. Yeah, but so if we, that's I would say the perception concern, that banks would not be willing to share unless they are assured that the issue of confidentiality will not come back to bite them. That's number one. So that would be the major thing. If that is assured, I think what Professor said is that we do it in an ecosystem. Not just anybody who walks in gets access to data. But in an ecosystem where we are part of a partnership with IHub, I don't know who else would need to bring in, then we continuously feed with data. But more importantly, rather than just getting data from one bank, it needs to be actually an industry kind of perspective. Yeah, so that because I may give you data for a specific customer base in a specific geographical location, but you would need to see a much bigger picture. And maybe you might need, for you, the relationship between the two sets of data actually might be what you're looking for. That there are people behaving, there's a particular segment of customers behaving this way in Nairobi. In Mombasa, you're not seeing the same thing. What is it? Why the difference, and what's the opportunity?
If you look at the data like from supermarkets, they will tell you so much. They will tell you which product moves faster, what are the costings, what are the patterns of behavior. They actually know more about us than our spouses. Because if men buy condoms without their wives, the supermarket knows, but the wife doesn't know. This is how it is. But we need to find a way of getting that data to create new products and expand our economy. I mean, that is, you can see so many areas you can manipulate that data. You had a follow-up? Okay.
I was referring to a specific product like this. NAC launched this thing for anyone, but it specifically addressed university students. So it released their data. And then if you want to make a team or do it as a loaner, take the data, look at it, then come up with a product that investors can use to do something with it. So that's already happening. Now, take the bank, you have the data already. Can you come up with a platform like that? Like, this is the data. Remove all the user, whatever, profiles. Then release the data to anyone. If you have the skills, if you want to, if you will to, can you take the data and do something with it? Yeah, that's what I was referring to.
Okay, up until I came here, I did not know that data was a need. That's the reason why these forums are important. You see, now that because there's nothing we're doing with this data. We're just collecting it, as Prof said. So why not give it to people who can actually make a difference? And it does not have to be a difference to me as Bank X or Bank Y, but it can be a difference to the society. So yes, we need to start talking about how to do it.
One last question from there, then we can clap.
My question is very clear.
Use the...
Thank you. My question is very clear. Sometimes back, I wanted to sell products to certain banks. I can't mention my names. And you find that it was so hard for me to sell a product to those banks. In fact, it was boardroom meeting after boardroom meeting. In fact, the best way I had to approach this bank, I had to go to their international branch that is in Rwanda for me to sell the product. In fact, when I went to Rwanda, it was brought back and it was taken by the same people who I was in the boardroom meetings with them. And you find that banks such as Small World are taking up the products even without me meeting them face to face, by just the idea. Why is it so hard?
Were you wearing a three-piece suit?
Yeah, those are some of the things that that's why I was able to go to boardroom meetings after boardroom meetings. And my recommendation is maybe next time we have such a forum is we invite the Bankers Association so that we can be able to make quick decisions.
Actually, thank you. I know the gentleman at the Bankers Association. It's just that we need to engage these people more. One, to get data from them. Two, to be able to look at the tech developers, because as I joked that was the three-piece suit, most of you are not used to this business of ties and whatnot. How does someone who is dressed like me get to the boardroom? Maybe, how?
No, I think things have changed from maybe 10 years ago. I mean, I think you saw the interview that our famous Sir Charles gave to Jackson Biko, and he told Biko, next time if I see you without a tie, I will not give you. So those perceptions, I think, are changing. about that. But to your question, I think I don't know when I was talking earlier about what do banks look at when they would want to partner with you as consumers and partners. I just elaborated on 3 broad areas where we're looking at speed to market, we're looking at competitive advantage, and we're looking at solutions that allow us to roll out our products on alternative channels. I think if your solution was lying, maybe they felt it was outside that parameter, or they felt that it was, these things happen, yeah? But I don't know. I wouldn't, because I don't have the specifics about that, I think I can confidently say that nobody would not want to listen to you just because you're an IT guy. I don't think so. I think the level of competition in the Kenyan banking industry actually is forcing people to seek out these guys who can give this kind of solutions and listen to them. Maybe you're just a victim of, there was somebody else who had come and given a cheaper solution, or they were feeling a bit overwhelmed by the number of solutions that were being presented. I don't know. Yeah.
So can we really thank them for coming? Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. So Mia, I will thank you for coming. Next month we have, as I said, some professor from Denmark. Most of you who don't know, much of the Frisian cows you see here and Ayrshire, they all came from Denmark. And I have tried to get them to focus around livestock. There is so much that we need. We got Sue here to talk about iCow. There is many more things that we need to look at the livestock sector. So he would come next month. The date is 20-something, 25th. We can actually send it, isn't it? 27th of June. Then, like you suggested, we would bring the CEO of the Bankers Association and several other banks, because the newest apps are around big data, and we don't have to push only government, that we get data from government to create new apps. We need to dig into other areas, supermarkets, banks, other areas where they collect the data and see whether it can help to create more innovative products going forward. So I thank you. I think I'll get it back to Nekesa.
Thank you so much to our speakers and to Professor Ndemo. I think I want to throw the challenge back to the IHub community. A lot of this conversation has been around what we need the banks to do for us, what we need Joanne to do for us, and so on. But I want to challenge us to begin thinking about how to sell our stories. Some of the greatest successes we've had as startups coming out of the IHub weren't successes because they found someone to invest with them. They were successes because they were able to build a product and talk about it and sell themselves in a way that people began coming to them wanting to be part of it. So let's build, if you're a developer, build your product to the point where ABC Bank is knocking on your door, wanting it, right? And I commend the guy that went to Rwanda selling his products, because really, I think what the IHub needs to do now is begin a lot more workshops on how to sell your idea, how to sell yourself. I mean, like you said, it's not enough to build a product. It's equally important to be able to sell it. Yeah. And so by the time ABC Bank comes knocking on your door for that app, is it good enough for them to use? That's my challenge for you. Make use of the IHub, make use of our different forums that we have. We have a Friday show and tell. Come and present that to your peers and let them let them critique, your app before you take it to ABC Bank. If you're looking to interact with government, I'm not sure if Martin is still here, Martin Obuya. He's our ambassador in charge of government affairs. Talk to him and allow him to help you figure out how to interact with government. Who should you be talking to about what, about funding, and so on, about data and that kind of thing. Right, so that's my challenge to you. In about an hour's time at 2 o'clock, we have an event hosted by Akira Chicks around cyberbullying and how we can begin to influence policy around protecting women. I'm sure it's open to everyone, whether or not you're male or female, but this particular interaction will be around protecting women online. And so I think you're welcome to join us at 2 p.m. On Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, 27th, we have a fair fair in conjunction with the Money Institute. We'll have someone speaking from Chandaria Group of Companies. We'll also have someone from Ashoka. And it's really lightning talks about how they failed and then how they were able to, pick themselves up and succeed. And so I think if you haven't signed up for that, go onto our events page on IHub.co.ke and sign up for that. It's going to be extremely interactive, a lot of fun, 6 to 9 p.m. on Wednesday. And it's limited sitting, so if you want to be there, I would encourage you as soon as possible to go and pick your ticket. It's free to attend. And that's it. Thank you so much.